Here we are, it's another Wednesday morning, and joining us once again, the principal of Greater Estate Agents, Tracey Caruana. Good morning, Tracey.
Good morning, Peter. How are you?
Fantastic, thank you very much. How's the last week been?
It's been busy, which is good.
Yeah.
It's been a very busy real estate market, which we want to see.
Absolutely. And as we normally do at this time on a Wednesday morning, let's have a quick précis of what we're going to be covering in today's morning magazine.
So today I thought we'd talk about an interesting topic, which is meth labs or meth in homes. We might have spoken about it before.
We have done, and I bumped into the last chamber meeting some of the guys from a pest control company who'd just been credited with their...
For detecting it.
meth.
Right.
So that'll be good to talk about.
So it's an interesting topic because it's something we don't talk about very often. Then a little bit about Airbnbs. You might have been following my journey on that.
I have been.
And finally, we want to talk a little bit about what homes shouldn't you buy. Normally I talk about what you should buy.
That'll be interesting.
And then I did miss one point, which is that I did meet with...
Did you you went out for lunch with Yvette Darth.
That's it, Yvette Darth.
Yvette Darth.
I can't pronounce her name. I'm sitting here going, oh my goodness.
I can't pronounce Yvette Darth's name either, so that makes two of us. Minister for Justice and Domestic Violence.
Yes,
yeah,
DV and Family Violence.
Yeah.
Also Attorney General.
And I hope you gave them a couple of ideas.
I did share my thoughts, my words of wisdom.
Okay.
But we can chat about that.
One of the things that I would hate to try and imagine is what it must be like when you know, maybe when you don't know, who's been living in your rental accommodation prior to you moving in.
There's a lot of old properties out there, isn't there, when you think about it, and you don't know the whole history. But one problem that's really flaring its head at the moment is meth labs or meth, not even labs, just someone has consumed meth in the property at some point in its life, and then you come along and move in. Okay,
well, there's a bit of education for a start. It's not that there's been a meth lab in the garage. And
no.
Wow.
Yeah, so there's meth labs, yes.
Yep.
So someone's been making meth in the garage or in the roof or those types of things, or there is just smoking it or consuming it in the house.
My goodness.
And generally, the locations that people would do that would be in the garage, in, say, the ensuite, where they're hidden, or in the kitchen.
Oh, my goodness me. So I guess the big question is, would people get kind of ill if they've had like a meth lab, or people have been smoking in there? Does that residue hang around for a while?
It's hugely toxic.
Right.
And especially for children, if they're residing in the home whilst the meth is being made and or consumed. And the longer they're there, the worse it is for them. But imagine like you said, you don't know the history of the home. You move into the home, find out that maybe there's been meth use in the home.
And you probably get to know your next door neighbour.
Yes.
Who might say, by the way, did you know...
Which is really common. A tenant or a new homeowner moves into the house and then they meet the neighbour and the neighbour says there'd been 4 drug raids there in the last 12 months.
Gosh.
And all of a sudden the person living there goes, oh my goodness, what's happened?
Or now I know why I'm not feeling all that well.
Correct.
Yeah.
So what can you do? First steps, I would say, is obtain a kit from online.
Okay.
You can buy a test kit online and they cost about $50, I think, from memory. And you just test some places in the house. So my recommendation of where to test is normally around where there's above door frames, say one in the kitchen quite high up, so above door frames near aircon units where there's good airflow because the particles are moving through the air.
Right.
And obviously I'm not an expert at this, but I have been in enough houses and done enough test kits in my time to see where and how we're going to find it. So in the garage is another place where you might test. It will show up if it's been consumed there or produced there in varying percentages on these tests. And there is a standard at which it's safe, and then there's an unsafe standard.
Right. For families who have gone into a home and they didn't know until, as you say, the next door neighbour pops in and says, "Hi, how are you going? Did you know?" If you've got children, that would be an awful situation to be in.
It's horrific. So a lot of the time the cleanup of these types of things, depending upon how much is in the house, involves extensive cleaning of the walls and also replacement of a lot of things. So sometimes the carpets are fully replaced. Sometimes houses have to be fully repainted, but that's after they've been cleaned. So you can't just repaint over the walls. It's not going to get rid of it. And I mentioned that it can be there for years. So this might not be what happened in the last 12 months before you moved in. It might have been what happened 5 years ago, and it doesn't go away. My advice, if you're a homeowner and you move into a house, is to... You probably don't have insurance.
Mm-hmm.
You probably should get a meth kit test done when you buy the house, just to protect yourself from in building and pest.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you're a tenant and you suspect it, then buy a kit and do the test yourself. Obviously, you can reach out to your property manager, but it's not a big space. That there's not a lot of people that test for it. And like you said, at the chamber, you met somebody that does it.
Yeah.
So they can come out, they'll do the tests, they'll check if it's there. Landlords actually often have protection from with insurance to cover the cleanup costs.
Right.
But property owners, if they own the house, they're not actually normally covered.
Okay. Some very good advice. And so if you've just recently moved into a unit and you find you're not feeling all that well, it could be worthwhile going online to find one of those test kits.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Tracy, when you and I used to meet a couple of months ago here on the radio, you were looking at B&Bs. So I gather we're still in that space?
Yeah, so I've been prattling on about Airbnb and the value, I suppose, of it for months now, and the opportunity that's in the Greater Springfield community around what people are looking for. I noticed a while ago now that there was not enough housing for people that are just coming to visit family, say.
Right.
So, yes, there are a couple of short-term accommodation options in the area that we know about. There's a hotel and there's Quest Apartments and things like that. But there still wasn't enough. Often you'd find that they're fully booked out. There might be an event in Ipswich and there wasn't enough in the broader area. And other times, I would see things like you've sold your house and your next property doesn't settle for a month and you've got a pet dog. So you can't stay at Quest, for example, or some of the other places, potentially. Your kids are still in school here. You don't want to have to travel all the way into Brisbane CBD. Where can you stay for a month?
Right.
That you can resume your normal life, cook and do your washing and all of that, and take your dog. There wasn't a lot of this accommodation. So I did flag it then. There are a couple of Airbnbs that in the area that I'm aware of, but so we started managing this property a while ago, and it's done really, really well. And a lot of the types of people that utilise it are people on holidays, people visiting family, but they don't want to stay with the family, people coming out this way to do certain events or whatever. Maybe there was something happening at Willowbank or whatever, they're over for the week. And then also some businesses. So some of your businesses where you're a rep for that company and you're needing to move around the different, the state or your territory, and you wanting to stay somewhere that's close to where you need to go to, the sites that you need to visit, and you don't want to stay in Brisbane CBD. So we found it to be really popular, probably to be rented out at least 5 days out of 7.
Okay, wow.
And the rates we were getting were about $300 a night for a 3-bedroom property.
Could every home be classed as a home that you could make a B&B?
I think that in the Airbnb world, every home could be, but there's not that much of a market for it, of course. But what people are looking for in an Airbnb really is nice furnishings inside the property, a home that's really clean, ideally in a great location. But a lot of the Airbnbs in our area are just in normal streets.
Oh, okay, right.
And it could be a next door neighbour kind of thing. So you'd be really surprised.
Yeah, I naturally thought must have a swimming pool, must be 4 bedrooms, double garage, en suites.
No.
Wow.
No, and I've even seen people just Airbnb out one room in the house they live in. So the rates for that are about $100 a night. You might have a surplus bedroom that is big enough that you can put a little TV, a little desk, might have direct access to the bathroom. And some people are getting, like I said, $80, $90, $100 a night, depending. for that in the area as well.
Legislation for if I want to convert my home to an Airbnb?
Yeah, so presently there is some insurance implications, so you do need to make sure that you've advised your insurance company. Some areas in Queensland have implemented taxes and or increased their rates. So Gold Coast City Council, they've increased their rates dramatically if your property is an Airbnb. They say that it's to deter it and etc. I don't really think it's fair. I think other states are looking at a short-term 7.5% tax.
But we know that there's only one way for local, state and federal governments to make money through taxes and licenses. So,
but bearing in mind, though, that income derived from Airbnb needs to be declared and is taxable income.
Right.
So it doesn't come without any costs as well. Like the Airbnb we were managing was probably only running at a 50% profit because the costs of linen cleaning, the costs of bringing cleaners in. So some people obviously clean the place themselves, but most of the time they don't. They're bringing in cleaners, and Airbnbs themselves the company charges a fee. Right. And then if you're having it managed by an agent, they're charging a fee. The fees for an agent is about 15%, so it's quite a lot. It's quite high, but there's a lot of moving parts in the transaction. So when you break it down, your cleaning, your yard mowing, all those things, you're not really making your $300 a night might actually be only $150.
Right, okay.
It just depends, you know.
So if people want to maybe dip their toe in the water, so to speak, you don't mind if they give you a call?
Absolutely. We're quite experienced at it. We actually enjoy it. I'd be disappointed if Ipswich City Council, brought in taxes, etc., to inhibit it. But I suppose we don't really have that many in Ipswich as opposed to Gold Coast, which is a massive part of their industry.
Well, you certainly get to meet people in high places. Yvette Darth, no doubt.
Yeah, so I had the privilege of being in a boardroom having a luncheon with Yvette Darth, Attorney General, Minister for Justice, Minister for Domestic and Family Violence. A very, very candid, beautiful conversation about some really topical things, including youth crime, big topic, and domestic violence and family violence, which is a big space, and I see a lot of this in the community. And it saddens me that I'm saying to you that I see it a lot, but in listening to the conversation with Yvette the other day, it does appear that there is really a lot of positive things and legislative things that are happening that are changing the laws around providing safety for victims. And I see it in the property management space. So if you are a victim of domestic violence, some of the laws that have changed mean that you are able to, say, leave the property without penalty.
Yep.
So you're not expected to fix all the walls of a property. Your bond is refunded to you. You're allowed to escape the situation, whatever that looks like for you, and move without. You're not listed on ticker as a bad tenant. You don't have to go back and repair and fix and do anything. And further, you don't have to. Your bond's given straight back to you.
While you're telling me those things that somebody as a victim of domestic violence is not responsible for, you can only imagine what they must have gone through for a home to have ended up looking something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where these laws that they've brought in are really, I think, a huge step in providing protection for people and an ability or a way to get out of the situation. We also talked briefly about the youth crime problem. To be honest, youth crime in our area is massive.
Yep.
You only have to be on the Springfield Mummies Facebook page to see on the daily that, and we've spoken about it many times, that we see on the cameras out the front of a house, the kids walking down the street, checking cars.
Yep.
Is it open? Is it, what can I steal? And or breaking into houses. It's happened to you.
Absolutely. In fact, there was a Facebook post last week of a chap, broad daylight, about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, walking out of just a typical Springfield home with the pump from the pool under his arm.
The pool pump.
The pool pump under his arm. And I think the caption said, "Let's make this guy famous. Let's try and track him down." Heaven forbid. You just wonder about some people, don't you?
Well, it was a good conversation because I'm really passionate about it and know a lot of people, including myself, that have been impacted. And I do see it in the property management space again because obviously, sometimes we might manage 3 properties in a street and we'll hear that they've all been broken into on that day.
Right.
You sort of shake your head and go, why? Why is this happening? But listening to Yvette speak about it and more importantly, how really the problem has moved from stealing cars as what youth would have done several decades ago, that we've moved now to a point that you can't just steal my car or your car by hot wiring it or whatever.
No.
You have to steal the keys, which means you then have to break into a house. Yeah? Yeah. So you've moved from car theft to now break and enter and car theft. And then if you have actually, someone's in the house and they're disrupted, then potentially there's violence on the person in the house as well.
Yes.
So you have 3 crimes or more versus just 1.
And on exacerbating that even further is they're not just doing burnouts and wheelies at the end of a street somewhere or out in the bush. They're screaming at 100 kilometres an hour down a suburban street.
Yes.
And then we know what happens after all that.
Yeah, well, she didn't really make any grand suggestions about the solution to the problem, but I don't know that any of us have got the solutions to the problem. She did talk about what some of the solutions are potentially, but in saying that, I think it's more of a social problem and that a lot of the time the youths that are conducting, themselves in this way have bigger social and family problems.
Yep.
And listening to her talk about the deeper problems in society and where these children are coming from and the situations they're coming from did really open my eyes around what the bigger problem is and that it isn't just youth stealing cars, but it's youth that are coming from horrific backgrounds.
Absolutely. The sad thing is we go back again a couple of decades, the senior sergeant would come around, literally kick you in the backside and say, you do that again, and look at your mum and say, if you need me, I'm down at the station.
Yes.
Today,
that doesn't happen.
You can't do that.
No.
And as you say, it's not just stealing the keys, it's breaking into the house. Then all the the domino effect that happens after that, it's horrendous. But the lunch was informative.
Honestly, the lunch was insightful. Definitely changed my perspective on a couple of things, which is good, and I really enjoyed it.
Normally, Tracey, when we do things on the morning magazine on a Wednesday, we talk about preparing your home for sale, and you can almost get a picture that every home is saleable, and we should look at all the homes that come up. But you mentioned at the outset that you're going to talk about homes that you kind of steal away from. That'll be
absolutely.
Interesting. Yeah.
So a lot of the time we're talking about what should you look for in a property, but today I'm going to say to you, really, what shouldn't you buy? What houses out there in the marketplace should you just absolutely not touch?
Yeah, good.
And it is different for everyone. So a lot of the time the house needs to match the person. But let's say we're looking through the lens of our property being a good investment for us, yes? Then I'm going to say to you, here are my top tips on buying a property that's a good investment.
Right.
Okay? And what shouldn't you buy? So you shouldn't buy a property that is on small land.
Okay. In today's society, though, most of our homes don't seem to have a great deal of land anyway.
I know.
Yeah.
But I'm going to say to you, the thing that goes up is land,
right,
and the house goes down in value.
Okay, interesting.
So I'm going to recommend that you always get the biggest block of land that you can for that suburb.
Good, yep.
So don't buy a small block of land. And I know a lot of the time people will say, well, it's more manageable. I'm going to say if you want the property to go up in value, try and find the biggest block of land. Okay, don't buy homes that are in really poor condition.
Right. Unless,
of course, you can afford to renovate. Steer away from homes that have been poorly built, that are in really poor condition, because these homes are going to be nothing but problematic over time. And so some of the big problems that I see in properties are, say, structural or bathrooms in really poor condition. Mm-hmm. So stay away from that. My third point is retaining walls. Now, I know in Greater Springfield there's retaining walls everywhere, but the further you can get away from a house with retaining walls, the better. The reason I say this is that retaining walls have a life, right, and it's not forever. And some of these retaining walls cost $30,000+ to replace.
My goodness, wow.
And assuming you've got access. And so when you think about the key things in a home that can break or that need to be repaired, if you have a leaking bathroom, it's probably going to set you back $5,000. But if you have a failing retaining wall, it's going to cost you $30,000 plus your house may move as a consequence. And no one factors that part in, that as the retaining wall gives way on a house, the house starts to slide as well. And we don't factor that in. And then sometimes houses need underpinning and they need to be rectified as a consequence of that. My fourth point on this topic is stay away from main highways and lots of noise.
Right. Yep.
Because noise these days is an escalating problem, especially when we're in higher density areas. Mm-hmm. Make sure that you're not right behind a daycare centre or right behind a major road, or go to the property at night and what do you hear? Is there a shopping centre right near you, and at 3 a.m. in the morning the dump truck comes along and picks up all the rubbish and wakes you up?
Good idea, yeah.
People don't think about that and they don't realise it, but it's a massive, massive problem because it causes huge stress in homes.
The other point that you brought up when we were together the last time, have the due diligence to look and see what other things could be happening in that particular area.
Yeah.
So we know, for example, that they're going to blow hundreds of thousands of dollars telling us we need a train line. We know we need a train line, but anyway. But where's it going to go?
Yes.
Where's the station going to be? Where's the car parks going to be?
Yeah, we don't want to be right beside it.
No.
Because it's going to devalue our property. So there's a sweet spot where it's in walking distance, but there's also a bad spot if we're right beside it.
Yes.
But some of these major arterial roads, they're taking on board more and more traffic. So you buy a property today not realising that in 15 years' time, that road becomes a major road, and there's a lot of noise that you might not hear at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, but at 5 p.m. at peak hour traffic, it's really noisy. So noise is a massive factor and deterrent, especially in property values. And I'm going to say really factor that into your decisions.
With the competition to buy a home nowadays, are you suggesting that when we go into a home, don't just think, I need to find a home quickly, go in with your eyes wide open, be really, really critical when you go into the wet area of a bathroom and to those kind of areas? I
mean, your building inspector can check those sorts of things and protect you again, but that's minor in comparison to a massive retaining wall that's going to fail in, say, 5 years' time. Because we can fix the bathroom quite easily, but it's not so easy to fix a retaining wall.
I'll tell you what, we've covered quite a lot today, including lunch with Yvette Darth. So well done. Hey, listen, Trace, thanks once again for joining us for the Morning Magazine today. If anybody has any ideas that they'd like us to raise in future programs, you can always send a message
Reach out to us.
Absolutely. Trace, have a good week and look forward to catching up again same time next Wednesday.
You too. Take care.